It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Welcome to the HVACR videos live stream. Hello to everybody. How are you guys doing this evening? Hopefully you guys are afternoon, evening, whatever. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I am alive. I woke up this morning, so I think that's a good thing. Haven't quite decided yet, but you know, the odds are it's a pretty good thing. All joking aside, I am super excited because half of my family gets home tonight. My wife and my youngest daughter have been on a school trip and they've been gone for 7 days. So it'll be super nice when I pick them up at the airport super late tonight, like way past my bedtime at like 10:45 or 10:30 or something like that. But luckily it's my local commuter airport. So it will be nice to have the crazy back in my house and hopefully get back to normal. It's kind of crazy because it's been myself and my oldest daughter who's a teenager, right? So she's has her own life, you know, like basically wasn't home most of the time, but it was cool because she actually included me in a few things. Like before my wife had left, she was kind of planning out because my oldest daughter was on spring break this week. And so she was kind of planning out where she was going to go with her friends and, you know, all these different plans she had. And like she had scheduled like, okay, and so you and I are going to go out to dinner on Sunday. And we're, you know, like, and it was cool. It was all good that she had thought of me in that way and stuff. And I'm enjoying these moments because, you know, she's going to be graduating high school this year and potentially going off to school. I don't know where, what, you know, anything about that, but I'm just trying to enjoy as much time as I can get. So it was super awesome. You know, and so for instance, like I went out with her boyfriend a bunch of places and her obviously took him out to dinner a few times in different places. And I try to do that stuff because it's nice. And I think that, you know, this trade can consume you it can grab a hold of you and pull you down. You know, it's really easy to get caught up in the rat race and, you know, wanting to make money and all that good stuff. I definitely was caught up in it I was way head deep in it for a very long time. And of course I still am, you know, obviously still running a business and running the videos thing and stuff, but it's nice to be able to take some time and enjoy the family and, you know, just get to hang out with them. So yesterday we went to the hockey game, just the local minor league hockey game, but it was super awesome. You know, everybody had a good time and it's just enjoyable. So, you know, encourage you guys to all remember that kind of stuff. You know, and, you know, when I encourage everybody, when you guys watch my videos, when you hear me talking and saying like, trust me, don't do this, or I encourage people to think like this, or don't make these mistakes. A lot of times I'm talking to myself, right? Because, you know, I'm constantly reminding myself, like, you know, don't let the little things get to you, you know, make that time, because obviously there's going to be a point when my kid doesn't live at home anymore. Right. And she's going to be doing her thing. And so obviously you want to spend that time with them. Right. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Right. So, no, she hasn't picked a college yet. Still got a bunch of stuff. So she's having to realize some real life bummers in that, you know, we make too much money to qualify for any aid, but we don't make enough money to send her to a 4-year university. I mean, that's just life, right? That's how it goes. So, you know, she has her hopes set on certain schools, and, you know, it's definitely not going to work for 4 years. You know, it's a possibility it'll work for 2 of the 4 years. You know, she can do JC for 2 years. So who knows? She's figuring out all of her stuff, but fun stuff. So welcome everybody. I see a lot of great regulars in here, some new people. It's awesome. Thank you guys for coming to this. Like, what is it? Like, why is it that a good majority of you continue to come back to this live stream? I mean, is it the community? For me, live streams are a community, right? I love watching the content creators do their live streams. Like, you know, I listen to the Misfits podcast. I listen to the HVAC School live stream. I listen to NorCal Dave. I watch his live streams, you know, just before the overtime show. A lot of times I'll catch that. And there's other ones too. I know I'm, you know, off the top of my head, Advanced Refrigeration podcast, you know, watch those guys too. But I love the community. I love going in here and communicating with everybody and seeing all the familiar faces and having conversations. And I encourage everybody out there. You don't just have to talk about what I'm talking about. The chat is there for everybody. You know, that's why we have people put things in caps lock, so you guys can still have conversations. But I love the community. So what is it that brings you all here to these live streams? Reading through the chat right now. Do I ever work on soft serve machines? No, I do not work on soft serve machines. Let's see. It's definitely not for my looks, Daryl Fern. No, 100% not for my looks. What strategy do I have when coming across a building without any water nearby? Do I carry a new Calgon Turbo Tank 2.0? Let's see. I currently do not have any buildings that do not have water. Now, I will say that there's some buildings that the water's in an inconvenient place. We all carry 2 50-foot hoses on our vans, and oftentimes, sometimes we will have to go get a third 50-foot or in certain situations. So what we will oftentimes do is, if we have a location that requires a lot of water hoses, you know, because we have water within reach of everything. It's just sometimes you got to connect 3 hoses. We'll usually leave a hose on the roof and stash it. And trust me when I say stash it, because people will steal your hoses. Don't leave them sitting on the roof. Let's see. But yeah, you know, I don't have any of the tankless things, you know, or, you know, the turbo tank or whatever. I don't have any of that stuff. I've thought about getting the Milwaukee one, but it's just something I haven't spent my money on yet. So, any interaction with NextStar based companies? What's my thoughts? No interaction with NextStar based companies. I mean, I've communicated with people that are part of NextStar, but I have no opinion on the subject. I mean, you really got to do your research, right? I will tell you that I know that the only way, from my understanding, and understanding how everything works, and I could be completely wrong, but this is what I've heard from people. If you want to be a NextStar company, you have to be all in. You have to drink the Kool-Aid. You have to follow all the rules, and you have to play their way, and they're going to help you to grow. But a lot of that comes with, you know, having to do things the way that they expect you to do them. That's what I've heard. I could be completely off base with that because I've never dealt with them, but that's just what I've heard from people. Not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying you really got to follow their recommendations for the process to work, is what I've heard. Let's see. HVACR Survival did a video on ice cream machines. Yeah, Rick, HVACR Survival, is a good friend of mine, and he works on a lot of Stolling machines. I believe he's like a specialist in the Stolling machines, from what I remember. And when we've talked about it and stuff. So let's see. Who's Your Daddy says we do warehouses and water is on one side of the building, and you're talking 300 feet, which kills pressure. Yeah, that is a bummer. Most of the time when I'm, quoting routine maintenance and different things for customers, I expect that they have water within, X number of feet of my equipment. 300 feet from there is just ridiculous, and they need to bring that water up to the building. And I would be pushing facilities or whoever your point of contact is on that building to get the water up there, because that's just unacceptable for them not to have water up there for you to service the equipment. There's just no feasible way. And what can oftentimes happen is sales managers that might sell a preventative maintenance don't know that that water's there. And this I have heard from people. I'm not saying everyone does this, but a sales manager might sell a PM and sell it at a certain price and for X number of hours, and not calculate into that fact that water is super far away. And at that low of pressure, you can't really do a proper maintenance. So that needs to be documented and brought to the customer's attention. Bring it to your management. And, and it is what it is. Just document the heck out of everything. That's what I would do in that situation. So let me see what else we got going on in here. Reading through the chat. I got a couple things on my list as usual too. Yeah, Bill, I'm so sorry. I started without you. I didn't even give you time to wipe. So any tips on basically starting a new life? You're relocating to a new city and starting a new job, going to be installing and servicing electro-freeze units. Jay Gonzo. Oh, wow. That sounds like a fun adventure for sure. Relocating to a new city, starting over. Yeah, that sounds interesting. Wouldn't work for me because I have a family, but it definitely sounds appealing for sure. Not really any tips. Just be you. Don't front. Don't be fake. Don't be, just be upfront with your new company and let them know, like, these are my weaknesses. These are my strengths, and just be out front with them. That's the best advice I can give you for that. Let's see what else. Who's Your Daddy says they've done a pump truck before. Yeah, I've seen some of the filter changing companies. They'll come in a box truck and they have a giant pump inside the box truck, and they'll hook up to the domestic water down on the ground and then pump hoses all the way up onto the roof and do everything with their box trucks. I have seen that before. Any recommendations for somebody starting a one-man show company? So here's the deal. If you want to start a business, you need to be an expert in HVACR, like an expert, and you need to understand business. That's the biggest mistake that a lot of people made, myself included, is not understanding the business side. Okay. I wing it a lot with a lot of things. Now, I don't run my business all by myself. My dad has been running the business for many years. We partnered together. We run it together. He's semi-retired, but yeah, I wish that we would do things differently, a little bit more proper. But it just takes time. So I would suggest anybody out there that wants to start a business really, really needs to focus on the business side also, just as much as on the HVACR side. I do not think, and I know that people have done this, and I know that it has worked for some people, but I'm going to give you some blanket advice. Do not try to start a business straight out of trade school. It's just not going to work. Okay. You need to be experienced. And we're talking 5+ years of industry experience, and you need to be an expert in your field. This is my personal opinion. I am not a business coach. Take it for what it is, but you need to have 5+ years, if not longer, of real experience, and also be well-versed in the business side of things. So that's just my personal opinion on the matter. Okay. So Aaron G says a great place to start is a book called Traction. Look it up. There you go. Let's see what else. Hello to everybody. Hello from Belarus. That is awesome. It is really cool to see international people in here. Hello. All right. So I released a couple videos this last week, and I want to get into some of the questions from those videos. So I had a keg cooler video, and a lot of the questions were about OEM versus non-OEM, or comments, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because I'm always stressing that I try to use OEM parts as much as possible. Okay. For the most part, with most manufacturers, and there is some exceptions that I'll make, with most manufacturers, I try to use the OEM, original equipment manufacturer's parts. Okay. I try to make sure that I use their recommended parts for the equipment, because it was designed for those parts. There's a UL listing with those parts. And for the most part, we're you know, hoping that the manufacturer has done their research to make sure that that part is a proper, you know, motor for it or whatever it may be. I realize that aftermarket parts do work, but you have to think about it from a business owner's perspective. Aftermarket parts require more thought, which leaves you to the ability that mistakes can be made. When it comes to OEM parts, it's more cookie cutter, and you just say the motor's bad, you order a new motor, you put it back in, everything matches up for the most part. Easy peasy, okay? Using aftermarket condenser fan motors on ACs, there's a lot of things that have to go into play. You know, just because you have a motor on your truck that looks right doesn't mean it's right. You know, is the blade going to sit in the right place? Is it going to spin the right RPMs? You know, there's so many different factors. And for the most part, and I realize that there's some exceptions, OEM is just cookie cutter. You got a bad motor, you make sure you verify it's bad, you order a new one, you put it in, it fits right where it's supposed to fit. The motor goes right back to the same place. The blade goes right back to the same place. And Bob's your uncle, right? So I know that there's some exceptions where it doesn't work, but OEM, in my opinion, is easier and it just works, okay? Especially in this day and age with the technology we have in our equipment, you got to be really careful about using aftermarket parts. Now, again, I'm not going to say that aftermarket doesn't work. It does. I've used it. I've used them for years, and I certainly can figure out how to make aftermarket parts work, but it just makes it more difficult for the next guy when he has to change it. And you used an aftermarket thing and the wiring harness for the, let's say he orders the OEM part, you know, but you've had an aftermarket it for X number of years and the wiring's all messed up or the Molex connector's been cut off, or, you know, I just prefer to stay OEM. It's just easier for me. But if you don't want to stay OEM, to each their own, it just makes it easier for me. I like it to be easier. I like less thought to have to go into selecting certain parts, you know, so we can just focus on getting these calls done. Let's see what else we got going on in here. Reading through the chat. What's my opinion on ultra low gas units? Nice gas units. Don't have any opinion because I don't really know what you're talking about there, Andrew. Give me some clarification. I'll try to see it. Ultra low NOx gas equipment. I got you. There we go. So ultra low NOx, I mean, I've only honestly installed maybe 2 ultra low NOx pieces of equipment. One of them, I was kind of having some gas fluttering going on with the gas valve. It was in a recent video that I showed on a carrier unit that I was doing some installations on. I find they're very, very touchy. You got to make sure that the gas pressure set, you know, where it's supposed to be. And I tend to notice a little bit more problems, but I don't have a lot of experience with them, so I can't really say. Now, also, I'm from Southern California. We don't have a high heating demand. So, you know, I don't do a lot of heating work. I can probably say that this whole entire fall into the winter, my company has probably done no more than 5 no heat calls. Like, we just don't do them. It's, you know, for the most part, when you're dealing with restaurants, when you pack people in there, you don't really need heat. You just turn off the air conditioning and the body heat will raise that room temperature really quick. But we do get them occasionally. So let's see what else we got going on in here. Bob's not your uncle, but Jose is. Okay, Brian. Well, Bob's someone else's uncle. Okay. OEM for the win. OEM all day for sure. Yeah, you know, I mean, and again, it's okay if you don't use OEM. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not saying that OEM parts can't be just as good, because sometimes they can, but sometimes they might not be. Okay. Barry Bonds, any recommendations on books that I've read about HVACR? Oh, so like training. I can tell you that Commercial Refrigeration for Air Conditioning Technicians by Dick Wers is a great intro to refrigeration book. It's an amazing book. You know, just has lots of great information. It's great to keep in your van when you really want to work. You know, the Racked Manual from Cengage. Is it Cengage? Yeah, Cengage. Eugene Silverstein is, I think he's the main author now, I think, on that book. Yeah, that's a great book too. Lots of great information in it. You know, the internet is a great resource for educational materials too, but you also have to know how to vet what's good and what's bad. So it seems like these days we have so many more gurus and people that are experts, right? And there's a lot of incorrect information out there. So I'm going to give you the best advice I can give you. Be careful who you trust on the internet, especially people on YouTube. Like myself, don't just trust something that I blindly say. Research it, verify, you know, look into it. Just because someone tells you something doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Okay. So always vet your information, and go from there. All right, let's see what else we got going on in here. Let's see. Andrew says you're from SoCal, but the ultra low NOx are the biggest pieces of crap on the market. Yeah. So here in Southern California, we have, obviously a lot of restrictions and regulations. Ultra low NOx is one of the things that we are really pushing. That was before the heat pump push. Now we're pushing the heat pumps. It's just, it all comes down to equipment not being installed correctly. That's really what it comes down to, right? Making sure that your equipment's sized correctly, installed correctly, ductwork is sized correctly, gas lines are sized, all that good stuff. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of issues. Now, let me kind of devil's advocate as a manufacturer, right? Because I don't work for a manufacturer. I don't represent a specific manufacturer. I can tell you that manufacturers, for the most part, they don't necessarily want to change their equipment. They don't necessarily want to constantly have to research and find new motors, because if they have something that works, it's a lot less money for them to continue using that piece of equipment and make higher profits on it and sell, right? Having to innovate and come out with all this new equipment is a problem for these manufacturers. They see issues and, they're being pushed up against the gun. The ultra low NOx furnaces, I can guarantee you those weren't, something that the manufacturers wanted to do. They had to keep up with regulations. Changing the refrigerants, we're going through this A2L change or phase in or whatever, right? We're changing to A2L refrigerants. And a lot of people want to say that it's the manufacturer's problems. It's not. The manufacturers aren't the ones that really push the A2L stuff. It's regulations that really pushed it. Changing to all the electronics and refrigeration equipment and air conditioning equipment. They're trying to keep up with industry regulations. They have to meet energy criteria, and they're just doing everything they can. Now, I'm not going to say that some of them haven't made mistakes. Of course they have. But, for the most part, all that change, if you guys are frustrated with any of that stuff, you need to focus your efforts on regulations. If you want to be part of something, go check out ACA. Go check out ACA is a great lobbyist for the HVACR industry, right? You can reach out to them and they go before Congress and all these different people. And, government people, when they write regulations, oftentimes they'll go to these industry lobbyists such as ACA, and there's other ones too, and they will ask their opinion and their advice. And also too, before there's new regulations, there's always periods at which they put it out there for review. And, so it's really easy for us to criticize way down the line, right? But if we really, really want to make a change, then we need to get involved in the, the authoring of the regulations and the peer reviews of the regulations and different things. But, it's really easy for us to say, well, yeah, I don't got time for that. Okay. But then at the same time, we just want to complain. And it's like, hey, if you really want to make a change, then get involved with the organizations that can help to make those changes. All right, let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Commercial refrigeration for AC. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that is an awesome read for sure. Today is the first day in a long time something referenced SMACNA standards. Isn't that the SM? Is that not the gas regulation standards? I don't remember for sure what that regulation is. Manufacturers aren't going to complain with new reefers because they'll just keep making money. The reason they do this is because equipment is lasting too long. I wouldn't say it's equipment lasting too long, but I do hear your argument on that. I mean, there is money to be made, but there's also money to be made on our side too. If they're coming out with new refrigerants, I mean, this is the thing that people aren't talking about yet. Have they really, really figured out the refrigerant cylinder thing? Okay, so there's some talks that some of the manufacturers of refrigerant cylinders, the recovery cylinders, can't be stored on their side. So they have to be stored in an upright position. So that's going to change the whole layouts of our vans. If that's true, I don't know if it's true. There's a lot of new storage regulations. Just wait until insurance companies find out that you have a mildly flammable refrigerant in your van. They're going to make you change. They're going to make you put vents on the top of your van with ventilator fans and all this different stuff. And it's going to change everything. So there's money to be made because we can't just do that out of pocket and absorb that. Like, you got to pass that on. So refrigerant prices go up, handling goes up. We have to change things in our van. That gets passed on to the customer. That's what you got to do to stay in business. So, All right, let's see. Hello to everybody. Okay, cool. So we talked about that. Ooh, this is a really good point. So on my last video where I had a warm keg cooler, someone made a comment and they said the number of customers who do not understand that these coolers are designed to hold products at certain temperatures, not bring products down to temperatures. That is a beat my head against a wall point of contention with a lot of my customers, because they will be like, well, I just made some ranch dressing and I put it in the reach-in cooler, and 45 minutes later, it's not below 40 degrees. And it's like, because it will never be below 40 degrees. That reach-in is not meant to bring product down to temperature. It's only meant to maintain temperature. And even maintaining temperature, a lot of these prep coolers that have cold rails with pans set in the top, if you read the installation instructions or the operation instructions from, let's just say, a Delfield cold rail unit, right? It actually says that it's really only designed to hold temperatures for 4 hours. And then they want you to switch out the food with cold food. I mean, so, this equipment, these custom reach-in coolers and different things, they're not meant to bring things down to temperature unless it's a blast chiller. I mean, even your walk-in cooler is not meant to bring things down to temperature, but oftentimes we have wiggle room built into the equipment sizing of our walk-in coolers that, for the most part, sometimes they can push some warm food in there, but it's not a good idea. You definitely don't want to be pushing entire carts of hot food into a walk-in cooler unless it was designed for that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, no, a lot of customers don't understand that their reach-in coolers don't bring things down to temp. They only maintain temp. Let's see what else. What percentage of units and parts are still made in the USA, do I think? I mean, dude, like 1%? I mean, in the grand scheme of it, it's probably less than 1% of units that are made with all American made parts and assembled in America. Like that's probably almost non-existent. It's probably 0.001. I mean, you got to be honest. We are a worldwide economy. We're not just an American economy. Like, this manufacturing, I mean, parts come from everywhere. So you're not going to find anything. I mean, let's just, even these vacuum pump manufacturers that say made in the USA, they're assembled in the USA with parts globally sourced. Okay. Don't let that stuff fool you. I mean, you're still having globally sourced parts. The metals are still coming from different parts of the world. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, of course, I want to support American and stuff, but I mean, there's almost nothing out there that is 100% American parts and American made. It's just non-existent. 407C is made in Alabama. Okay, there you go. One, is that all 407C or just one type of 407C? Let me see. What else do we got in here? Keg temp drops 1 degree per hour from what you were told. Just one keg. Yeah, but like you got to figure on that little glass tinder reach-in that I was working on, that is a, 1/4 horsepower condensing unit. And, so it's barely moving, transferring heat enough, let alone 9 or 10 kegs at 75 degrees. It's never going to come down to temp. It's going to ice up before it comes down to temp. So, oh, that's gross. You said you have the worst story for maintaining temp and bringing stuff down to temp, and it was a morgue box. Yo, 100%. Hello to everybody that's saying hi. Welcome to the stream. So if relocating condensers, is it best to unbraze from the unit or leave a stub and reconnect? Okay, so here's the thing. How many proper practices are you following? And, how good do you want it to look? If you really, really want it to look amazing and you can safely and properly unbraze something, then more power to you. But when you're unbrazing, are you purging with nitrogen? Are you following all practices? Is there possibility of contamination? It's hard to say. Are you going to overheat a valve when you're trying to unsweat it? I don't suggest that you unsweat brass fittings because brass is a really soft metal, and heating up and unsweating and doing that can cause the metal to melt. So be very cautious about doing that on brass. I mean, it really depends on the situation for sure. Industrial can keep you busy. Oh, okay. So you guys are talking about that. Kegs should be delivered cold. Yeah, they should, but half the time they're kind of cold, not that cold. All right. Reading through here. I released a video where the main breaker was tripped downstairs. It was an AC that wasn't working. And I went through the process of finding a compressor that had failed. So I had a comment on here, and actually a couple people commented about this, and they said, why in that video did I remove the wires off the burnt contactor? And why not just replace the contactor instead of removing the wires off the burnt contactor? So, for, people that haven't seen the video yet, you can watch it on my channel. I'm talking about the last 2 videos that I released, but it was, the main breaker is tripped and the AC is not working was the title. So in that situation, I went up to the piece of equipment and I looked at it and I said, you know what? This equipment is borderline, might get replaced. It might meet the customer's criteria of replacing it. So what is the point of putting a contactor on that compressor when it's just as easy to pull 3 wires out of the main lug where all the wires, connect and everything, terminal block or whatever. So it was just about saving the customer money. I didn't need to put in a new contactor because we don't know if we're going to change the compressor. So there's no point. Again, I'm looking out for my customer's best interest and communicating with the customer. Now, if I had a feeling they were going to change the compressor, if the unit wasn't 20 years old, I might consider just putting in a contactor and waiting. But, in that situation, it's all about communicating with your customer and seeing what they want. Okay. So some people had brought to my attention that they appreciated the explanation of what a circuit breaker does. And a circuit breaker there is to, I explained in the video, the circuit breakers are there to protect the electrical system, right? They're there to protect the electrical system to make sure that the main feed coming into the building doesn't become a problem. But then you're going to have individual breakers after main breakers that are there to protect the wiring, to make sure that you don't have electrical fires in the wiring because you're overheating the wiring because a breaker's not tripping. So I think it's important for people to know that, a breaker isn't just there to protect you from getting electrocuted, because in all reality, breakers aren't really going to keep you from being electrocuted. GFCIs, they're going to do a better job of making sure that, they're going to attempt to keep you from being electrocuted. But a circuit breaker in general, I mean, if you have a 100 amp circuit breaker and, you start getting electrocuted by the feed coming out of that circuit breaker, it's only going to trip if you're allowing the current to pass through you and go to ground. I mean, if it's just obviously it's going to ground, but I mean, it's going to take a while for a 100 amp circuit breaker to trip if you're the path, to ground. It's going to take a minute. So, GFCIs are meant for that, but really those circuit breakers are there to protect the electrical system, the wiring, and make sure that there's no issues with that. Let's see what else we got going on here. What would be a good start into commercial HVAC in general? As a 21-year-old in the trades already, what would be a good start into commercial HVAC? I mean, just go knock on someone's door and ask them for a job. If you've already got experience, say I came from the residential side, if I'm assuming that's where you came from, and I want to get my feet into the commercial side, and you're going to become an apprentice and you're going to work your way up. That's the way to do it. And, just get your feet wet. Don't be afraid to apply at a company and, just put in the time and move on up. There's a lot of money to be made in this trade, and it's a great trade that can support your family for a very long time. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Breakers just keep the wires in the wall from glowing and starting fire to your house. That's a great way to say it. Brian says you had to quote out a disconnect today. Someone broke it and just wired direct. Yeah. You got to be really careful about that. And I am guilty of it just as much, trusting that I shut something off, just because I flipped a disconnect switch. You always want to be checking with power. And remember at the beginning of the stream, when I said I'm talking to myself a lot of the times, I'm telling myself, don't forget to double check that it's disconnected, all 3 legs to ground, to make sure there is no voltage, right? But don't just check all 3 legs to ground. To properly check it, phase to phase, then all 3 legs to ground. Try checking all 3 legs to ground on a corner grounded delta. You're going to get a little surprised, because you will have 0 volts to ground on one of the legs, and it'll scare the crap out of you when you have 3 phase going to the system. So across all 3 phases, and then phase to ground to make sure that it's completely disconnected. Then, proceed with working on it. Let's see. B Millwood says, I went into the air compressor field because the ad said the EPA cert a plus. You stayed in it for 12 years, back to HVAC now. Well, there you go. Right on. All right. What do I do to relax from work? Mario, unfortunately, at this point in time, I don't do anything to relax from work. Every waking moment of my time is spent working my normal job or making videos or trying to spend a little bit of time with my family. So I definitely need to bring back in some of the things. I have nothing right now. Like literally the videos is everything to me. Like it's funny. My wife's out of town and You know, pretty much if I wasn't watching a movie, I was making a video or working on a video or answering emails for a video or something. So I definitely spend way too much time on the videos, 100%. So read through here. All right, cool. Let's read through my chat or my comments really quick. Okay, I already answered that question. Could I explain what I meant by, oh, okay. So I was working on a Linux package unit and the main breaker is tripped and the AC is not working. And I mentioned that 2 of the condenser fan motors weren't working properly. And I had to bypass a couple of the condenser fan motor relays to test them. So someone was asking, what did I mean by that? How did I bypass the relays to get the condenser fan motors to come on? So on the Linux package units, the L series units or the Prodigy units, they have condenser fan motor relays, and the condenser fan motor relays have a normally open and a normally closed contact. So if the relay is not being energized to turn the condenser fan motor on in that situation because of a low ambient switch, you know, it's too cold outside, so it's not running, you know, a condenser fan motor. That was the case in my video. What I did was I switched from the contacts because it had a normally open and a normally closed. So I grabbed the power wire, switched it to the other contact, right? Because when it's not energized, then it's not closed. So then therefore the relay is sending power to the normally open thing at the moment, right? Because it's not being energized. So I just switched over to the other side of the relay and I was able to temporarily verify that the condenser fan motors were working. But you can't leave it that way because then when it tries to energize it, it's going to open that and turn the condenser fan motor off. So keep that in mind. How do I deal with employees who recreationally use pot? Yay or nay? Ignorance is bliss, my friend. Ignorance is bliss. That's how I deal with it. So as long as it doesn't affect me, you know, I'm not going to address it until I have to address it. So could I explain what you meant by, okay, I already answered that one. Okay. So, you know, when in my videos, oftentimes I will forget to do things. You guys got to remember, I am not, nor have I ever said that I was an expert. I was the best. I'm not the best. I'm just a normal person, just like you. I make mistakes. I put my pants on one leg at a time. Okay. I'm just a normal person. So I'm not perfect. I make mistakes on a regular. And I don't want people, you know, when I first started making my videos, I used to edit them and I was like, man, that was incorrect. I got to edit that part out. And I started to get imposter syndrome. I couldn't handle putting out a video that I knew looked perfect, but it wasn't perfect because that job was a dumpster fire or whatever. So I started showing the mistakes as long as I address the mistakes, right? So that's what the closing words of my videos are. So it's so funny because even to this day, I love it when I get comments, YouTube comments criticizing me. And the criticism, I can clearly tell they didn't watch the end of the video because I am my own worst critic. So watch till the end and I'm usually going to unpack all the mistakes that I made and explain like, hey, it's not perfect. I'm trying my best, right? All right, let's see what the chat has to say. Because I am through all my list of questions right now. So I need to go on a walk in a park. I do. Actually, I should have been going on walks all week with my dogs. My dogs probably hate me right now because I haven't been taking them on walks because I've been busy. I've been playing with them in the backyard, but I haven't been, you know, taking them on walks like I should be. Let's see what else. Reading through here. What am I missing? I already answered that one. People says they don't believe me. I don't know what that means. Don't know where that one. I don't know where you're going with that. Let's see. What CFM vacuum pump do I use? SuperTech. Okay. So first off, let's discuss how many CFMs can you get through a 1/4 inch hose? How many CFMs when you're pulling a vacuum on a system? If you have a 1/4 inch, one single 1/4 inch hose, how many CFMs can you get through it? It's minimal. It's like less than 1 CFM through a 1/4 inch hose. It's so minute. And then you add a Schrader core depressor in there and that reduces, or maybe it's like 2 CFMs. I don't know. It's so minute. So, you know, the bigger the pump doesn't necessarily mean that your evacuation is going to go faster. Okay. You need to have large diameter vacuum hoses that allows your pump the full potential that it has to evacuate the system at a faster rate. Okay. You really, for the most part, don't need to worry about evacuating too fast. I know that, you know, and even I used to say that you're going to freeze the moisture in the system. It's almost impossible to do that. Okay. majority of the time, you're not going to freeze the moisture in the system. If you're having issues, it's always possible. If you really do have a lot of water, well, then you just got issues, right? But if it's just a normal system, you're not going to freeze it, okay? But I use large diameter hoses. So the question was, how many CFMs is my vacuum pump? It's a 10 CFM vacuum pump, but I don't need a 10 CFM vacuum pump. The reason why I bought a 10 CFM vacuum pump is because I really like the Fieldpiece VPX7 vacuum pump. That's the one that I use. And the 10 CFM one, the top of the line one that they sell, is the lightest vacuum pump they have. If you buy the 8 CFM or whatever, it's heavier than the 10 CFM. So I just bought the 10 CFM because it's light and I wanted something light. So that's why I have a 10 CFM pump. I probably only needed a 10 CFM pump, probably maybe, in the last 10 years, probably 2-3 times. I've only needed a 10 CFM pump. It's been very rare that I've needed one. Okay. Normally the smaller stuff will do just fine because your main restriction with a vacuum pump is your hoses and the Schraders. So remove those and it's going to make things go better. Brian Sanders says he uses a 6 CFM pump, removes valve cores, and use a 1/2-inch diameter hoses. That's great, man. That's much better than what we used to do, which was use 1/4-inch hoses and leave the vacuum pump running all night. Okay. I'm also going to go out on a high horse, raise my hand up here and tell you, you don't need to be doing those triple evacuations anymore. It's a waste of your time for the most part. Okay. You get large diameter hoses, Schrader core removal tools. You really don't need to be doing triple evacuations. Okay. For most standard refrigeration systems, I realize that some manufacturers' instructions still call for a triple evac, but most of them, they're dumb. Okay. But if you got to do it to follow manufacturer's instructions, they want you to document it with pictures or whatever, then do whatever they want you to do. But you really don't need to do a triple evac. Okay. It's always a good idea to purge a system with nitrogen before you evacuate it. Okay. You're pushing the air out of the system. That's a great idea. Okay. But your vacuum pump with large diameter hoses, good oil and good system oil, you're going to do just fine. Another thing that we don't stress enough in the industry when we're doing evacuations is, for the most part, you don't want to expose the compressor oil to the atmosphere until you absolutely have to. So if you're changing a compressor on a system, you're pulling the old one out, put the new one in place, but don't pull the rubber plugs yet. Okay. Don't pull them until you're absolutely ready. So then when you pull them, you only have minimal atmosphere getting into that oil and causing moisture contamination. Okay. Just do your best. That's the biggest thing. Let me see what else we got going on in the chat. What am I missing here? Kroger specifies triple evac on new circuits on their rack systems. Total waste of time. But here's the thing. On the supermarket side, SuperTech knows this. On the supermarket side, they're dealing with miles of pipe. Okay. So that's sometimes needing bigger than a 10 CFM pump. Okay. You need some big stuff, but also too, when you're pulling on miles of pipe, you got to remember if there's 1/4-inch lines and stuff in there, I mean, that the restriction is the refrigerant line, right? But supermarket doesn't have the opportunity to pull proper evacuations because they rely on dryers typically at the expansion valves and at the cases. And they have oil management systems where they can routinely change oil, and changing oil in a supermarket refrigeration system is a normal routine maintenance thing for the most part in a lot of those systems. So they have other means of dealing with moisture contamination. Not saying that a vacuum doesn't matter. It does. But on the supermarket side, you know this, SuperTech, that, you don't have time to pull down that entire system after repair. It just doesn't make sense. So you're going to do your best, get it into the negative territory, maybe into a micron level, depending on how big of a system it is. And then you're going to, let it roll and maybe do some dryer changes, and let the dryers clean it up. That's one of the things that sucks about the supermarket side, just as an outsider looking in, is that you don't have the ability, you don't have the time oftentimes to do things 100% correctly, because time is money, SuperTech says he's seen supermarket guys purge entire circuits. Crazy. The way that I was taught was to purge a circuit. I didn't have a vacuum pump in the vehicle that I drove for the first 2 years working in the industry. First year working in the industry, I didn't have a vacuum pump. I wasn't doing my own service calls, but I was taught to purge a system. Just put nitrogen in the high side and wait till it came out the low side of your gauges. Okay, good. Put it on there. I mean, I can tell you how many systems out there that I didn't do proper evacuations on, but it started to seem odd to me, and I started to get wiser, and I'm like, that's not right. it was confusing. And, you know, there's a lot of old school methods in this industry, and it's getting better. It's getting a lot better because we have a lot of people that want to do better. I love tools, and I love using new tools and finding good uses to make them make my job easier. So any upcoming installs? Yeah, I mean, I've always got equipment to install. Always got equipment to install. Ice machines. There's ice machines at my shop right now. Don't have any AC jobs on the list right now. We've got reach and cooler installs, walk-in installs. You know, those are always on the list. So yeah, definitely got some coming up. Let's see what else. What else do we got going on in here? Reading through the chat right now. Rack on install, vacuum is pulled, service side. You can't. Yeah, no, you can't. You know, you don't have time. And you got to be practical too, because see, the thing is to completely dehydrate oil that's contaminated is almost impossible when it comes to a refrigeration circuit. So, you know, when you start getting moisture and oil and stuff, you can only do so much. And then you got to do dryer change outs and different things to try to help you to clean that stuff up. When hiring someone, do I find more value in a 4-year degree or 4 years of experience? HVACR Tim, it really depends on the individual. I find the most value in personality. Once you find personality and trainable, coachable people, you know, then you grow from there. Mechanical skills are a must. But, you know, 4-year degree doesn't sound like a bad idea, you know, but again, it's going to change for every individual, because you could have 10 guys that all have the same 4-year degree and they're all going to be different individuals, you know. Any plans to expand my company to the LA side? No. I used to go to LA and not anymore. It's just too much of a nightmare. Just don't really want to deal with it. Supertech says you hooked up your vacuum pump to an oil filter to vacuum it after you changed the filter and blew the oil out of it. Oh yeah, that would be a surprise, huh? Let me see what else we got going on in here. You got all the skills right here. Don't even pretend like that, Bill, because I've been telling you to move to California for like 5 years and come work for me, Bill. So, you know, all right. So yeah, I'm super excited. I pick up my family tonight. For those that just came in right now, my wife and my youngest daughter have been on a vacation for the last 7 days, like a school field trip. And, they are getting back tonight at like 10:30. So I have to stay up past my bedtime. And then not only do I stay up past my bedtime, but when I get home, you know, we're going to hang out and talk and stuff. So tomorrow's going to be rough for me. And I have a job scheduled tomorrow morning too. So I got to get up all tired, but that is life. Let's see. Keith Peterson says, Rick from HVACR Survival is working on the space station. Rick has been doing some cool stuff, man. He has some cool customers. He was out here in California a while back. I got to go meet up with him down in San Diego because he was accompanying a trailer that was going to be transporting satellite parts before a launch going to space. And so Rick got to accompany that trailer across the United States, making sure it had redundant cooling systems. So he basically was in a bus behind the trailer, making sure that the cooling systems were maintaining the temperature inside the thing. He has a whole video on it. It's really cool. So it's man, I envied Rick when he told me he was starting to work with that company and do that kind of stuff. It's really, really neat. Ontario or LAX, they're flying into Ontario, the easiest airport to get in and out of. Zach says, did I go to a trade school or did I learn as I go? I did go to a formal trade school. I went to Mount San Antonio Community College. Great school in Walnut, California. It is a community college that has a trade school program. Now, the funny thing is I never finished the program. I am 2 classes shy of the program. I need to take technical math and welding for HVAC. And that would probably explain why I get so much criticism for my brazing techniques, because I've never gone to school for brazing. So there you go. There's your answer. But yes, and I learned on the go too. So what happened to the intro? Missed that introduction, voice, quality, integrity, and tradition. Yeah, while you enjoyed that, I'm sick of hearing my own voice. So I had to have a change up for a bit. It may come back, but I needed to hear something different for a while because I'm just sick of hearing my own voice. Is it just you, or is the equipment getting cheaper and cheaper and the manufacturers know? Yeah, but it's not the manufacturers, it's you. You're the problem. I'm the problem, because we demand cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. The only way to make cheaper, cheaper, cheaper is lower quality. Okay. So, you know, you buy a fancy schmancy car, you know, and it might have better quality, might is the key word, okay, than a really, really cheap car. That is the biggest thing is the market drives the products downhill. Now, why is it that we have more condenser coil leaks and evaporator coil leaks? Well, regulations. Regulations drive efficiency, right? Efficiency goes up, something's got to give, right? So we make our copper thinner and thinner. So, you know, if any of you guys have been in the industry and worked on equipment from the 70s and 80s, you would know that if you demoed a condenser and cut it open, the walls of the copper were really thick, but nowadays they're super thin. It's not just the manufacturer wanting to be cheap. The thinner the copper, the faster and more efficient the heat transfer. So it's a give and take. To meet these energy requirements, every manufacturer tries to do something a little bit different. SuperTech says, no Coke nose. Nope, my mustache hairs are not hitting my nose hairs because I've been trimming my nose hairs lately. But now that you say something, you're going to start it. So let's see what else we got. Thank you for that super chat too, by the way, SuperTech. You call BS, get rid of the computer and give you a thermostat. You know, and again, it's going to be harder and harder to have a thermostat because regulations demand high efficiency equipment when majority of the times the general consumer, you know, can't ever see a return on investment, right? I installed new equipment in my house. I put a spaceship of a unit, a carrier, infinity, whatever thing, right? Variable capacity, speed, all this crap, and communicating, all that fancy stuff. I mean, out of pocket, I'm $14,000 out of pocket and ductwork and all that stuff, not including my labor. I mean, if I sold that job to a customer, it'd easily be $50,000 to $60,000 with all the work that I put into my house and air sealing it and stuff. Nobody can afford that without financing, you know? So I don't know. You can go get me off on a tangent on that one. You know, if you need rebates to make something affordable, it's a scam. And it's just the rebates are just ways to put it on everybody else. So, you know, it's great that they have all these rebates, but we're all paying for it because the rebates are coming from somewhere, you know, it's tax incentives and different things. So, even the most expensive units are failing from factory defects. Yeah, that's, you know, I mean, there is times when that does happen for sure. Copper, you mean aluminum? Yeah, for the most part, most of my stuff's still copper, but yeah, aluminum too, same thing. Is there any new technology for the HVACR industry that I want to learn? Oh, I would love to learn CO2 refrigeration and more supermarket stuff. I would love to. I just don't have the ability to take my business into that side. I would love to learn more about VRF and VRV, you know, and understand that a little bit more. I think a smart play would really be getting into the technology side, the robotics side, especially if you're in restaurant stuff, because someone still has to fix the robots. Even if the robots are replacing people's jobs, flipping burgers and flipping fries, someone still has to fix the robot. So I think that getting into the higher technology side of the industry and getting your foot in the door now is a good idea for sure. Do my customers allow me to upsell more efficient parts, or do they want bare minimum? It depends on the customer. I mean, I have some customers that don't even question anything I do. Like, I'm not joking with you. I have some customers that are just like, just get it done. And if I install, you know, fancy parts, they're like, cool, it better work, you know, and then they just let me to a certain extent. So it really just depends. But then I have some customers that nickel and dime you for everything. They have a not to exceed value of $300 on the work order they send you. And I'm like, hey, you better go ahead and increase that before I even show up, because I meet that not to exceed just pulling up to the door, you know? So it's like some of that stuff's just kind of silly. New certain brand of walk-in control uses voltage memory in their control. Oh, volatile memory in their control. That's interesting. Let me see what else we got going on here. Have you ever thought about doing industrial? I mean, it's all stuff that's interesting to me, but I'm not going to take my business into that level because I don't feel qualified to start doing industrial work because I don't know anything about it. So, yeah, it's definitely something that I want. Rebates equal taxes. That's the truth. All right. Read it as power loss equals losses program. That's interesting. I'd have to read some more about that. Your customers don't want to do VRV systems as it saves on energy long term. Don't want to do VRV systems. The thing about more technology though, when you get into VRV and stuff like that, is that it requires a higher skill set. And these customers already are struggling to pay the bills and stay profitable. So the technology boom right now for these customers is actually hurting them because, what I've heard is that CO2 is going to be pretty mainstream amongst everything. They're going to have CO2 package units. They're going to have CO2 everything soon. That requires a skill set that this industry doesn't have yet. Yes, there is people out there like Brett and Kevin from Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. They're great at educating people on CO2. Trevor Matthews is, doing a good job at getting people really interested in the CO2 stuff. But the industry as a whole doesn't have the skill set to adopt a mass CO2 upgrade to the entire everything. And I still don't understand the CO2 thing because, for those of you that aren't from California, couple years ago, they were kicking out all the dairies and kicking them out of California because of the cow farts, and crap like that. And I understand that's methane, right? But I'm saying they were having issues with the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, and it just didn't make sense to me. None of that stuff makes sense. But then we adopt CO2 as our refrigerant, and you don't have to contain it. Right. There's people that are saying CO2 is a problem in the atmosphere. So I don't know. I don't understand any of that stuff. Let's see what else we got. There are CO2 remote condensing units already out there for single systems. Yeah. I mean, there's a CO2 heat pump water heater coming out. I was just like hearing something about that. It's coming out for everything. So have I considered going residential HVAC or do that along with commercial? I mean, it's something that I've considered, but do I do any hot side work? No, I don't do any hot side work. I do refrigeration and air conditioning. So exhaust fans, ice machines, air conditioners, and walk-ins and reach-in coolers. And yeah, that's what I do. Ray, thank you very much for that super chat. I really do appreciate it. Are the prices higher on certain name brands? Yeah, definitely. Reading through the chat. I already read through that. Okay, cool. Yeah, really awesome that you guys are all in here. Let's see. Tom says that the CO2 heat pump water heater that does heat recovery 2 for the houses was available over 12 years ago. Yeah, and that's a new thing too. CO2 heat pump water heaters are not new. They're just getting popular right now because everybody's on the heat pump trend. A lot of this technology has been around for a very long time. Great point there, Tom. Fryers are actually, for the most part, what is it you're saying with that? I don't know where the top part of that was. Yeah, I don't know what that is. All right, cool. Oh, actually easy. Okay, I see what you're saying, Free Funky. Yeah, they're just greasy. That's all. All right, cool. Well, it is time for me to wrap this up. I'm going to go make some dinner and clean up the house and pretend like it's been clean all week because my wife's getting home and she's been gone for 7 days. So I got to make the bed for the first time in 7 days. Yeah, if she knew that I didn't make the bed every day. I had this like perfect section where I just lay in my bed, go to sleep, wake up, and I don't make beds, none of that stuff. So I got to go get the house cleaned up like it's been clean all week. So, excuse me, choking on my own spit. I appreciate y'all making it into here. I'm going to cue up the outro music, and we'll be back with some special guests here in just a minute. Again, I appreciate you all, and we will catch you on the next one.